Hello, everybody, and welcome to VOCABLE. This is the advanced recording number 850, and I'm Shelly Vito. Classic rock. We are looking at rock and roll in this issue, among many other things. But here on the advanced recording, you're going to be thrown into the world of classic rock. This year at the Velodrome in Marseille, you have a Rolling Stones exhibition. In Paris, the Palace has a David Bowie exhibition. Well, I couldn't get, obviously, David Bowie to interview us, although if anyone could speak from the dead, I'm sure Bowie could. And the Rolling Stones, I don't have enough cachet to get them on in an interview, but I did the next best thing. 19th Nervous Breakdown is a band, a tribute band to the Rolling Stones, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to not one, not two, but three band members from 19th Nervous Breakdown, which is the title of a Stones song. So here, listen to Jason, Sal, and then joining us a little bit later, Dana from 19th Nervous Breakdown. Thank you, Jason and Sal from 19th Nervous Breakdown, for joining us today on VOCABLE. Can you please introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Sure. I'm Jason. I'm the bassist and current manager of 19th Nervous Breakdown. And Sal, he can introduce himself, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm Sal, and I play the keyboards, and really, that's all I do.
That's all you do? You don't even carry the bags?
No, Sal's responsible for running a lot of the sound as well, too. So
okay.
And he's a lot bigger of a Rolling Stones expert than I am, which is one of the reasons we wanted him on. He's been a huge fan for forever, and he knows the history of certain songs and recordings. So we figured he'd be a better fit to have on here in case you have any really hard-hitting questions about the music.
Excellent. Let's go with some. Yeah, okay. Well, let's ease our listeners in because maybe some of them don't know the Rolling Stones much. I think everyone knows of the Rolling Stones here. So tell us first about 19th Nervous Breakdown. What is 19th Nervous Breakdown?
Well, it's our local Rolling Stones tribute. We started the band almost 4 years ago. So basically, Eddie, who's our current Mick Jagger, he and I have been in some classic rock bands together for about 11 years. And, after about playing about 400 shows, every single time that we walked into any venue, someone would say, oh my God, you look just like Mick Jagger. And like, we kind of took it as a little joke, but we did play some Rolling Stones songs. And about 4 years ago, we decided we're like, maybe we can do this, right? And so we kind of just, Sal was actually the first person we got in contact with, and with him playing keys, and he was actually auditioning to be the drummer for the band. So we kind of just went from there and said, hey, we're gonna learn this catalog of songs. So that's kind of how we got our start there.
Okay, so classic rock we'll get to in a bit, because classic rock, I'm guessing that we're probably of the same generation. And so growing up with classic rock is pretty important. That's also one of the reasons why you can't see me on the video, because I grew up listening to classic rock. So, but let's go with So, were any of you major Rolling Stones fans before you got your gig together? Oh, there's a new person entering.
Oh, is there?
Dana or Dana?
Oh, Dana. Yes, Dana is our drummer, who has also been given the link.
Okay.
He's the new guy. He's been around 2.5 years.
Okay, thank you for the he, because I wasn't sure if it was a she, and I went, wow, I didn't realize that you have a chick drummer. That's very cool.
We do tend to have a female in our band at times. We have a few that do help us out with backing vocals, and sometimes we feature them, as the solo performer on maybe 7 songs a night, depending if we're doing a 4-hour set or a 2-hour set.
Okay.
So we are an equal opportunity employer.
Very good.
So
Dana, can you hear us?
It looks like he's still trying to connect, but that's all right.
Okay. So were any of you major Stones fans before you got your band together?
Sal is the resident Rolling Stones expert. So he's probably the biggest fan of all of us.
I remember the Stones with the whole British invasion stuff with the Beatles and all that good stuff. And I was in a band playing drums when I was like 14, 15. And we did many, many Stone songs, many, many Beatles songs. It was all that kind of music, the Kinks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I get my Stone stuff from way back when.
Okay. Yes, from the source to a certain degree when they arrived. Would it be worthwhile hearing how many concerts you've seen of the Stones?
Honestly, I've only ever been to one live Stones show, but I'm actually the youngest member of the band, and while I've liked the Stones, I didn't really start getting into their music that much until we decided to really put this band together.
Wow. Okay, so you were indoctrinated, actually.
Yeah, well, I've always been familiar with the catalog, but once we started doing the tribute act, we really had to start going a lot deeper into the music as opposed to just learning, their big hits that were on the radio. We have a lot of Stones fans that come out, and we try to please everybody with playing all the hits that we can. But there's a lot of big Stones fans out there that are really into, the B-sides and the cult classics. So we really try to make our show, about them as much as, just playing the hits, because, they've heard all the hits before and they want to hear some of these deeper tracks that they don't normally hear from other bands. You go to any classic rock show around here and every band, plays Honky Tonk Women or, a couple other, Stones really big hits, but as far as hearing the B-sides, that's kind of where we specialize.
Okay. And you've used the term classic rock a lot. Finding a classic rock station in France is next to impossible. So
Really?
Can you explain what you consider classic rock to be?
Sure. So we consider classic rock mostly anything from, that British invasion era of, the 60s up until probably somewhere in the 80s, so anywhere that's maybe a little less than 40 years in between, 60 and 65, 85. That's kind of what I consider classic rock.
Mm-hmm. And does it have to be guitar heavy or can it range?
No, I mean, we do, the rest of us do dabble in that other classic rock act, but we play pretty much anything from every band that, from Cheap Trick to the Beatles to, we play a lot of one-hit wonders, from Greg Kinn's Breakup Song, which was released in 1980 to, sometimes we might play a song by Ringo Starr, that was released in 1974. So, they're not super rock heavy all the time, but they can be. It just depends on the audience. We try to read the audience and figure out, what the best songs to play are.
Welcome, Dana. I think that we're connected now.
Yes, thank you. I had some technical issues.
Well, you're right on now. And so can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
I'm Dana Blake from East Providence, the Riverside section of Rhode Island in the United States, and I am the drummer for 19th Nervous Breakdown.
Okay. And have you been a lifelong Stones fan, or have you been catapulted into the life of the Stones?
I think more the latter. I actually played country music drums for 30 years prior to meeting Jason in 2019. I did have exposure to the Rolling Stones back in high school in the 80s. But I played a rock gig when I was in high school, and I made like $10. And the next night I played a country gig with my stepfather, and I made $75. So I never looked back. Back then you could make more money doing it. I think that holds true today, but now I'm in a position where I'm not doing this for money. I'm just doing it because I enjoy it.
Okay. And the country background surely helps with a lot of the Stones tunes.
It does.
Absolutely.
I find that it makes me more versatile.
Mm-hmm. So basically, from what I've understood, the reason why your band merged is because your lead singer looks like Mick Jagger. I mean, just to simplify it, there really is.
That's really it. And the fact that he already knew, I mean, he was a big Stones fan as well. And at least growing up, kind of in almost that same era that Sal did, where he was just, submerged, with Rolling Stones and Beatles at the time. where you just couldn't get away from it. So he always listened to all the albums, and he hadn't really listened to it in a long time, but once we started thinking about it and he knew all the lyrics, it was a pretty big deal for us, because none of us are really good at learning lyrics, and our brains are kind of full at this point of learning words. And the funny thing with Mick Jagger's lyrics is he has so many of them. If you listen to the song, sometimes there's like 7 verses, and he just has a lot to say but nothing to say all at once. So it's kind of funny. So we couldn't really get someone that could learn these songs like Eddie already knew them. And again, the fact that he looked like Mick Jagger was a big deal, because we don't really all just like take we don't put on wigs or anything and try to look like Keith Richards. We try to keep the look of the Stones a little bit, but we're not wearing wigs. We're not one of those kind of tribute bands. So the fact that we have someone that looks like Mick Jagger is at least enough to kind of, appease most audiences there that are looking for an authentic looking, tribute to the Rolling Stones. There are a few others out there that are international that we know of. Satisfaction is one of them, and the Blushing Brides are big in North America and Canada, as a Rolling Stones tribute, and both of their singers look like them, but they also act like Jagger as well. And Eddie's not much of a dancer, so we kind of just stick him as the face.
That was one of my questions. If you actually take on the roles, we have an article as well about David Bowie and all of the persona that he took on. Whereas for you guys, it's really the music, and then just the great fact that Eddie looks like Mick Jagger. Okay. Right.
We and our lead guitarist, he'll a lot of times he'll put on a big red headband or something like that to kind of look like Keith Richards a little bit, but we try not to go too far into that. It's just not our thing. Some people they won't go see a tribute unless it's like an authentic looking, tribute. And I'm going to be honest, we lose a lot of, bids on gigs just because we don't actually put on that type of show. But, a lot of real Stones fans really appreciate and like having us around in the New England area. So, and we, there's never a time that we're playing to an empty house. So it's great. It's really great that there's so many Stones fans out there that really appreciate what we do.
Yes. And I can imagine it could almost be a parody of sorts if anyone tried to look like Keith Richards and live like Keith Richards even. So,
well, I'd say maybe I live a little more like Keith Richards than the rest of us, but
oh my! Yeah, well, you're younger perhaps than some of your other.
I'm a little younger. I can afford to drink a little more Jack Daniels than the rest.
And maybe that's a question I hadn't thought of, but what is the life of band members in a tribute band? I mean, you said that you have a day job. How do you manage late nights and a normal life if you have one?
I'm just always a super, super busy person, and I pack my schedule with, every single day, minute to minute, as much as I can, whether it's work or fun. So I'm just a really organized person. I keep all sorts of calendars, and I have to keep everyone else's calendar straight. Whether Sal and Dana know that I'll send out constant, reminders and updates in Word document or any other method. Text messages. We text each other all the time, just to say, hey, this show popped up. We're going to do this, and who's on vacation, and in order to get the shows that we get. We kind of have to have all of our calendars together. So I'm really thrilled to work with people who are all about, just say yes, unless it says on our calendar that, someone has, the day off or has a week off due to vacation. So in that regard, it's kind of like its own full-time job where you'd be going into work and, putting in for a day off. If you don't put in for that day off, you're expected to work. So.
Good. A good manager, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I can be a little bit of a tyrant, but in this case, you kind of have to be because we have so much going on.
And that's good to hear because you're just coming out of the COVID crisis, the worst part of the crisis. Dana, you just got on board just before the crisis. So talk to me a little bit about how the band's weathered that storm.
we've been very fortunate that throughout the pandemic, we were booked at a lot of outdoor events where keeping the space between us and the audience and to some degree each other was pretty good. We had a very busy 2020, even despite, the lockdowns and everything else, because there were venues out there that would put us outside. So we didn't really miss a beat, no pun intended. We've been playing strong throughout the whole pandemic. It's been a great ride.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I've got a couple of questions that might go towards Sal, but everyone can jump in on this. 19th Nervous Breakdown, of all the songs that you could choose to name your band, where did 19th Nervous Breakdown come from?
Well, that also comes down to planning a lot in advance and being on the pulse of what else is out there as far as, what other band names are being used as far as a tribute name. If you type in Rolling Stones on the internet, tribute band, you'll see all sorts of band names as whether Dead Flowers or Sticky Fingers or Satisfaction or whoever it is. Everyone's either taken a name of an album or a song already. And we just really did some extensive searching to make sure that we weren't stepping on anyone else's toes as far as the band name. And so 19 Nervous Breakdown was probably one of the only songs that we could find where that name was not taken.
Wow.
So that's really the story behind it. It was more like just trying to find a song name that we could name it that would be recognizable to most Stones fans, and yet not confuse us with anyone else.
Mm-hmm. How often do you get together to rehearse?
That's a really tough question. Only because when we're in the thick of really doing our touring, so to speak, if we're already playing once or twice a week, we really don't practice much.
Mm-hmm.
We found ourselves in the last couple months probably practicing more than we would have wanted or liked to, only because we have been auditioning some new backup singers. So that has put us in a position to practice more. But we all know the songs. We don't really need to practice really at all.
Yeah, you're not trying out new titles or anything. Okay.
Right. And sometimes we do, but again, as I mentioned earlier, we're not really good at learning the words to new songs, so that tends to kill most new ideas.
Backing off the Jack Daniels might help you there.
Well, luckily I'm not the singer, so it doesn't matter.
What is your favorite song to play, each one of you separately?
Okay. For me to play, one of my favorites that is kind of a cult classic is 2000 Light Years from Home, which is off of the Satanic Majesties album. It's a really, that whole album was really kind of the, how do I say, it was just kind of out there. So it's a little different and most people don't know it, but when we play it for real Stones fans or people that are really big into the catalog, it's just kind of like a ooh wow moment, because there's no other tribute out there that we know of that plays that song. So it's kind of one of those moments for us when we play it live. It's really fun.
Okay. Sal?
Jason, you stole my song.
Oh, did I? Oops.
No. That's one of my favorites, but I guess my favorite to play in the band, because it's the only one I get to play up front, is the Midnight Rambler.
Ah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Absolutely. How about for you, Dana?
I mean, there's so many, and I'm learning that there's an endless library of hits for this band, but I think Can't You Hear Me Knocking has got to be one of my favorite ones to play. We don't necessarily hold true to form for the Stones version of it. There's a lot more guitar and drums that are throughout that song that I have a ball playing it. I think in our list right now, there's just shy of 80 songs that we could pull off at any given show that I am comfortable with. So that's tough. But Can't You Hear Me Knocking has definitely got to be up toward the top on my favorite list.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's really great. And when we have our sax player with us too, that's a big, sax heavy song for a solo at the end. And especially when we have our sax player with us and he's playing it too, he just knocks it out of the park. So it's really fun just to even hear, all the extra instruments in there as well.
Mm-hmm. While you're talking about the liberties that you've taken, do you do that? Is it fun for you to take the liberties? Is it a slippery slope because you can't take too many liberties because you're a tribute band? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's pretty rare that we take liberties, except on occasion we will drop the key of the song down a little bit. Most people don't notice something like that, but it's just so one of us can do the vocals. The other thing is when we do feature a female lead on any of the songs, obviously we're taking a departure from what would be done normally, but there are some songs that just lend themselves more to a female vocal as well too. So we tend to, put that up front whenever we can. We think it's a really nice feature, and most people don't complain about it, but some people kind of like shake their heads like, oh, that's not, real Stones or whatever. So it is a slippery slope there.
Each one of you, do you have a favorite album?
For me, it would be Beggar's Banquet.
And why?
Well, for me personally, I think that's one of the best Stones albums ever made. That was right after they did Satanic, and they returned back to their roots more or less there. And it's one of the last good albums Brian Jones put a lot of good effort into. And there were so many songs there that if you look down the road, I always feel that the Rolling Stones wrote the same albums over and over again. They just changed things around. And to me, Beggar's Banquet is like a foundation to what the Stones later became, as opposed to the blues roots, which preceded that in Satanic Majesties. So I think Beggar's Banquet would be the one I like. A lot of good songs off that album.
Yes, and mentioning the Brian Jones, you obviously have seen the Godard film, The Sympathy for the Devil. So Sal, tell us a little bit about the transitions that the Stones took. You just told us about one, actually. Can you go a little bit further? I don't know if all of our listeners know about Brian Jones even.
Strangely enough, I saw the Rolling Stones the first time they appeared in America, and I saw them. The next time I got to see them was like 2 years ago. So I didn't see them for 30 years or whatever, 50 years.
Wow.
So when I saw them in what was called the old Boston Garden Arena, Hockey Arena, they didn't even fill the place out. But the whole back end of it was empty. We spent a whopping $10 to see them.
Oh my gosh.
And they were absolutely fantastic. They played everything from their very early albums, like 12 by 5, Out of Our Heads, all of that stuff. And they were really still very heavily into blues. So they'd be playing a lot of blues songs. And there weren't many hits there. I think their only hits were like Heart of Stone, Maybe It's All Over Now. This was pre-Satisfaction. So their involvement, when they got to, in my opinion, once they got to Beggar's Banquet, they said, no more following the Beatles, no more we going to be pop stars. We want to go back to our roots. And I believe from that point on, all their albums were heavily blues oriented or country or any of that stuff that we tend to just take for granted the way they play now. But early on, they were not like that. It was almost just all blues, and not always the most popular blues either, but great stuff like Little Red Rooster and What a Shame and stuff like that. And again, they didn't write a lot in the beginning. In fact, I told Jason the other night, one of the first songs they recorded was actually written by the Beatles, and it was I Want to Be Your Man, which I think Ringo. Yeah. And if you look hard enough, you can find that on an EP in England. But really, that was their first introduction to pop radio. They're playing a Beatles song. And in fact, the other day I saw on, I was telling Jason this as well, I saw some recent concert, maybe within the last 5 or 6 years, where they were actually playing Come Together by the Beatles. So that's pretty cool.
I don't want to commit a sacrilege, but Sal, is there any point in the Stones' career, I'm getting towards the 80s and early 90s perhaps, where you feel that they were no longer the Stones in their sound?
Well, I think there were a few times in their career that, strangely enough, I got back to the Stones through my wife. I didn't kind of like the change they went into.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the blues. So when they went into the sort of sticky finger age, and all they sang about were drugs and women, and so I said, these aren't the Stones I liked. But funny thing is, she wasn't a big Beatles fan, and we kind of mixed it up, and I became a Stones fan again. Where I think they lost it, I would say, I think just because of their endurances, and I think as artists get older, they tend not to write as proficiently as they do, or are they not as leaders of their generation. So I would say somewhere after Voodoo Lounge, I don't think they were as big at songwriters and trendsetters, and that they're still big as far as concerts and people going to see them and people wanting to listen to them. But I think they kind of started to diminish at that point. I mean, how amazing that they even survived that long, considering their history of and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they're going on 60 years, so yeah.
Right.
But the poetry I can understand, because they really were poets, and their songwriting had some beautiful lyrics of it, and so I can understand that maybe as we get older, maybe we get a little bit more disillusioned, and maybe that some of the poetry goes out, and appealing to crowds. Again, the slippery slope. It's almost like a pact with the devil. You know, at what time do you have to pay the piper and appeal to the crowds that want to hear you do what every jukebox has on it?
Correct.
They don't have jukeboxes in the States anymore, do they?
No, you might find 2 or 3 restaurants in New England that have one, but yeah.
Okay. So what about the trickiest song to play? And maybe it's a different song for each one of you.
Oof. Yeah, there's a couple tricks in there. There's a few that have always somehow given us trouble, and for honestly, I don't even know why we don't even play them, because somehow they're so tricky that we Mother's Little Helper, somehow we started playing that, and then it became a problem. I don't even know what happened with that song, but I know there's a reason why, but I can't tell you why. But we don't really play that song anymore. Because there was some kind of tricky nuance in it or we had trouble matching it up with the vocals, and I'm not sure what happened, but that's a song we tend to avoid just because. One of my least favorite to play, only because it got put on me to sing, was "Start Me Up," and I dread playing that song whenever we are asked to play it. It's a great tune, but the lyrics are so similar from verse to verse, it's easy to get confused as to where I am. So I dread that one a lot.
And no one lets you off the hook. You have to play it in your set.
It was one of their biggest hits, and especially when we're dealing, I think it was 1980 that came out, or 1981, and so it was one of their biggest hits after their heyday, what I consider their heyday, from late 70s to when they started. So it's from that different era, so we have to play it. It was one of the biggest hits. I mean, there's not one classic rock station that doesn't play that song. So and it's big for Stones fans, but we do try to avoid it.
Sal, Dana?
There's 2 for me that jump out, and one is Jumping Jack Flash, and that's just because the intro is always a pain in my.
Sal?
Strangely enough, the very song I like is the very song I hate to do most of the time, because usually at the end of the night and I'm dead, I'm tired, and they'll say to me, "Sal, do you want to come out here and sing this?" And it's like. But I walk out there and I'm nicely finished for the night, and by the time I'm done with the song, I'm a ball of sweat, and it's like, God, it's like I feel like I've been running a marathon. One song we don't do it at that much anymore, was "Emotional Rescue."
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a difficult song to pull off because there's nothing in it.
Mhm.
I mean, it doesn't do anything. It just goes bum, 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 bada bum over and over again. And
Right.
it's a cool song. I like it
Yeah,
when
I miss playing that.
playing. It's kind of
Mm.
like nothing to play. And it gets good reaction when you do play it, though. People get up, ooh, wow. But it's just kind of a lousy song to play.
Mm.
Musician, right?
What about your crowds?
It's a huge mix, and you know what? Yeah, we just played this venue last week, but I think I might be conflating it with the time we played that place before. But there was literally like 22-year-old girls that were in the audience, and they you could see on their mouths they were singing the words to every song, like even some of the B-sides, and I'm just like shaking my head, like how do they know this stuff? Like but there is a big mix. You know, we do have an older crowd, but again, the Stones are kind of timeless, where today's generation of kids is actually just going back in music catalogs because, you know, a lot of the pop music is so bad. So they're going back and they're listening to these songs and albums, and it kind of blows my mind that we do get so many people that are young, in addition to people that are in, you know, their 50s or 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really cool mix of people, and sometimes we even get, you know, like parents and kids coming in together as a family, and they know everything, and it's a pretty cool feeling to see that.
What do you need to do as a tribute band as far as rights?
So we actually know a lot about this, as far as playing in venues. So in America, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. So there's BMI and ASCAP, which kind of run the music industry as far as, you know, what rights are concerned. So each venue that we play pays into ASCAP or BMI on a yearly basis in order to have live cover music or tribute music. So we don't need to pay for those rights. That's all, you know, if we're performing under that venue, then they have, you know, the rights based on the fees that they pay into BMI or ASCAP. If we were to go record a song, that's where it becomes our liability. Dana and I we have this original band as well, where sometimes we record some other covers, and there's some sites, you know, some entertainment websites that we have to go to actually purchase the rights if we're going to record it. And when we're recording it, we have to disclose, you know, how many copies are intended to be sold, both on a physical, like CD or vinyl level, and how many songs, you know, we anticipate being sold on a digital platform as well. So that's really the only time we pay for, you know, covering a song is if we record it and release it. But as far as the actual live performances, we don't have to pay for anything like that. That all falls on the venue that we perform under. And something else you might want to include. So the three of us are actually, I mentioned earlier, we like to stay busy and we like to stay playing, you know, live as much as possible. So we actually have another tribute act that we just started up maybe about 3 or 4 months ago. And that is a Creedence Clearwater Revival tribute. But we have a little twist on it. We have a female fronted singer. So it's called Kelly and the Poor Boys. Our singer's name is Kelly, and she actually does some backup vocals for us for 19th Nervous Breakdown, which is kind of how we met her to begin with a few years ago. So yeah, she's the lead singer of the Creedence tribute, which is kind of funny. So and we're just starting to play that act now. We've only played a few shows, but we're really having a lot of fun with it. I love CCR probably, you know, more than I love the Stones. So to me, it's almost a dream come true to be able to play that catalog of music as well, because every song is phenomenally, it just gets me going. It really gets me going to play those songs.
Good. What would you like our listeners to know other than all that we've talked about already? It could be anything under the sun. It needn't be specifically about classic rock or about the Stones. What would you like to say to France?
I just say, hey, I'd love to be part of playing down in France or in Europe at some point soon. Dana and I, again, we had our original band, and we released an album last year, and we were on a compilation that was released in the UK and Europe last year. So there's always the possibility that we'll get to go and perform in Europe, and that's one of my dreams to do. So I'm hoping that we get to France sooner than later.
I thank you for this opportunity to just, talk about the Stones and music in general. I think that, as a drummer, as a musician, I live and breathe music pretty much every waking hour. I think it's something that's universal. So what would I say to people of Paris, people of France? Listen to music, just enjoy it. Don't dig too deep into what it means. Just enjoy it. It makes me move. It makes me happy.
Oh, lovely. Sal.
Well, these guys cover everything. By the time it gets to me, once again, I'm so tired out. I don't know what to do. I think I was in France a couple of years ago. My wife finally got me over to France, and we were in Paris. Went up to Normandy. Went down. It was a beautiful time, great country. Got to hear a few bands, but not classic rock bands, but just different little bits of jazz bands. I'd say to the people of France, I hope we can get over there and play for you guys. And sooner the better.
The skies are opening up. Well, I'm sure that many of our listeners know of venues, so you don't be surprised if you get a call.
Well, that'd be great.
I'm going to tease you all a little bit. Probably, well, Sal even said that you started playing young. You probably started playing in high school bands or in the garage, picking up chicks and things like that. When you're playing now, post 20 years old, let's say, whatever age you might be, does it feel the same?
No, it's completely different. The level of professionalism that, we get from our band members now, completely, it just blows away anything I did, earlier on. While the energy of playing in, punk or garage bands was really fun in my 20s, keeping people motivated to keep going in those bands was a lot harder. And everyone's younger, and they want to do their own thing, so it was tougher keeping people together. Whereas with Sal and Dana and the rest of the band, we're really more of a family, and we really have it in our heads that we want to just play live and do this and make some money. We don't do it for the money. That being said, we don't do it without any money. So there's, as long as we're on the same page there, or I don't have to explain anything, even when I'm taking a certain show to them as to why. They know why. If it's a good opportunity, even if it's a benefit of some sort, where we might not get paid, they understand that it's almost like a TV show. We have our arcs, and episode 20 we might need to start building for episode 20 in episode 10. So that's kind of how it goes, and we're just trying to take it always to the next level. Sounds good. Well, we really appreciate your time, Shelly. Thanks so much for reaching out to us.
Well, thank you for saying yes, for coming on and sharing your knowledge and being very honest too about it. A lot of people would market it in such a way that you are the one and only Stones tribute band, right. And it's nice to hear all of the textures and what you're doing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of us out there, and there's only one Rolling Stones, and we're all just imitations. So it's fine that we're all out there. People need to hear the live Stones in their local venues, and we're just happy that they're all doing that. We hope we can be a part of it.
Lovely, lovely. Well, thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. That's really all we have time for today. Go to the basic to hear about greetings and salutations, to hear a little bit of a breakdown of what we've got on the advanced recording, and a little treat about robots. R-U-R? I hope you've enjoyed this jam-packed advanced recording, and I look forward to speaking with you all in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.